Welcome everyone to the Sister Stories podcast. The aim of this podcast is to marvel at God's sovereignty over each of our lives as women and to encourage one another by sharing our stories. My name is Sophie and today I'm joined by Amy.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Can you start by telling us who you are, Amy? Yes.
My name is Amy Brushhaber. I am married to Dawn. We've been married for 25 years. We have two kids. Kaya is our oldest. She's 20. Ketley is our youngest. She's 18. They're both off at uni. I work at Bedelsford School, which is a school in Kingston for students with complex needs. And complex needs means 3 or more diagnoses of usually a medical something, although we've got genetic disorders, we've got syndromes, we've got epilepsy and gastrostomies and all sorts of medical things that I never ever thought I would be dealing with in my life. But I've been at Bedelsford for 10 years and I love my job.
Great. So we're going to be talking about your walk with Christ, and we're going to start with your family background. So could you tell us a little bit, how you were brought up and what that was like?
Sure. So I was brought up as the daughter of a pastor. My father was a pastor in a Baptist church in the U.S., and my mom supported him. And it's interesting growing up in that way because I always felt like I had to live up to expectations and fit a certain mold and look a certain way on the outside. And I remember as a little girl having my little purse at church and my little dress, and sometimes I would take my purse and hit it out at high school boys, and that broke the mold a little bit. But I accepted Christ when I was young, probably 6 or 7, and then was baptized when I was about 11. But funny enough, I remember doing it because my friends were doing it. And my dad was the one to baptize me. And looking back, I cringe a little bit because that's not the reason that you should be baptized. However, I was.
Let's unpack things a little bit, maybe. So did you have any siblings at home as well?
Yes, I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me.
Right, okay. I wonder how that was like. Obviously, you said a little bit of having these expectations around you. What was your home like? What was your home life like as well?
I mean, it was a typical kid growing up in the 80s. I think my dad built us a tree house in the backyard, and we rode our bikes to the neighborhood pool, and didn't have phones in that time. And I remember getting our first computer, and it's I think my dad was away most evenings with meetings and church functions and those kinds of things. But we attended Vacation Bible School every summer, and so it was really immersed in faith, which is good. It's a good thing. I think I take it for granted sometimes, and I never had one of these amazing conversion experiences like some people have. But yet I'm really, really grateful to have grown up in the church, and
So was your knowledge of Christianity and the gospel mostly from church, or were you also reading the Bible together at home, or what did that look like?
We used to do family devotions in the evening, and it was usually from a little storybook and with a Bible kind of reference. And I remember one in particular, it was called Singing Penguins and Puffed Up Toads, and a book about animals and how faith relates to that. I also remember a lot of Christian storybooks and books on tape. That we had.
And what about school? Did you go to a Christian school, or were you mixing with other kids that were not necessarily Christians?
Yes, I went to public school my whole primary and secondary school, and then I went to a Christian university. So that was a really different experience in that the school was called Bethel University, and we called it the Bethel Bubble, where you live in this happy little Christian world. It was a campus all of its own, so it wasn't within the community much. So I'm grateful for that. But again, I think I grew up a very sheltered life too. Yeah. Not a lot of exposure to the world. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Not even at school with friends or before for university.
Some, but I think the world today has changed significantly, and it's much more pagan now.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I think let's just carry on with your story. And so you said that you got baptized at 11, and that perhaps that wasn't the best time for you to get baptized. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I think I just wish I had been older to really, really understand that commitment and to make it for myself instead of I'm just going along with the crowd. If you have to go with the crowd, going in a Christian way is a good thing. Yeah. So I mean, I was involved with band in high school, and I really didn't stray much. I think that was maybe out of fear, however, that I needed to fit into the perfect little mold. And so I think rebellion was a scary thing for me, so I never did it.
I see. Was that, I mean, not that I would want to reflect badly on your parents or anything like that, but was that because you were scared of disappointing your parents or some other people?
I think so, yeah. And I've always been a fairly driven person, but part of my worth has come from achievement, and that is not what God has for us. I think He loves us for who we are, not for what we do or how we appear to others,
Exactly.
So that's something. It's been a journey for me. In 99 and 2000, I was working on a master's degree, and in my prideful, sinful self, I needed to be the first one in my cohort done with my thesis. Not on time, early, and that I did that at the detriment to my health, really, and it was God really taking a brick to my head to go actually stop it. Yeah. So no, it's definitely been a journey, and I know that work for me is a coping mechanism, but yes, a way to receive worth, and I know that is wrong. And so yeah, that's been a theme and a journey through my whole life, really.
Yeah. If we go towards, I guess, your understanding of the gospel when you were young, especially, and maybe building up to your baptism, it might be hard to describe now, but how do you feel, how well did you know the gospel at that time when you got baptized, would you say?
No, like I say, I've grown up in the church from the day that I was born, so I think I had an understanding of what Jesus had done for me on the cross. I think it hasn't even been until more recently that I have truly fathomed what that was and the ramifications of it. Even in this last year, I've been studying John with Bible Study Fellowship, and that has really, that Christ willingly went to the cross for us. So as a kid, you know the facts, but the heart change, I think, is very much a journey, and it comes throughout your life, really. Yeah.
When would you say you started to have a more maybe personal relationship with Christ then? When did that come, would you say?
I think it was probably even when
I know it's hard to tell sometimes.
No, I would have said even when my kids were born. So 20 years ago, because then you realize the role of the father and the child, and that's, you have a different view of God then as our good father and what he wants for us as his children. And I think having kids, you fully realize your dependence on whoa, this is out of my control. And actually our kids belong to God first before he just gives them to us temporarily.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Going back a little bit, I guess, but can you tell us a bit when you got married and I guess the chronology of things after university? And,
So Don and I disagree on when we met.
He
would tell you it's when we were in year 2.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I would say I didn't actually meet him until high school. So we went to secondary school together.
Yeah.
And then we went to university together as well. In the Christian university, and however, we didn't start dating until after we had graduated from there. We were married in 1998, so 25 years ago, and then Kaya was born 5 years after that.
Great. Nice.
So that's the timeline.
Yeah, and then when did you move over to the UK?
Yes, so... oh goodness, it was 2013, so 11 years ago. And again, that was God really chipping at me and teaching me the value of material possessions. Because when we moved here, it was going to be for 2 years, a year or two, and that turned into 3, turned into 5, turned into 10, and when we moved, we ended up getting rid of a lot. Yeah. However, we had a storage unit in the U.S. that we had it was packed full, 10 feet by 10 feet, all of our earthly possessions in there. And every month we're paying to store that stuff. And finally, 4 or 5 years in, we looked at each other and thought, why we could have purchased these things all new again. Yeah. And so we have since gotten rid of most of that. And then, so it's God just teaching me that he will provide, and it's not about collecting material possessions. Yeah. So we've lived here 11 years. Yeah. Do you want me to chat about this last year and what that has looked like?
Yeah, actually, before we do that, maybe... how did you hear about Cornerstone and arrive here, really?
Yes. So Cornerstone... you kind of Google the statement of faith for a church before you go and visit. And Cornerstone, at that point in time, met at Bedelsford School. Oh, yes. So it was right around the corner from the house that God provided us, fully furnished house that God provided us, which was around the corner from the school, the one-form entry that both of our kids were provided a place at. Yeah. So that was, again, God's provision of all of that, and God provided us Cornerstone Church, and he knew that we desperately needed Cornerstone Church because we came and we knew nobody, and that's a really, really hard place to be. Part of me thought, they speak English, it's fine, it will be fine.
Still very different, isn't
it?
But
actually, we got here, and I dropped the kids at school for their first day and realized that I was alone and knew nobody, and that was really hard. But I remember our first Sunday at Cornerstone, we came in, and Kim and Rory Bell were all over us because we had kids the same age. And they invited us over for lunch the first day, and I went, what is this? And I didn't know where they lived, and I didn't know how to get home, and it was like overwhelming grace, actually, that God gave us our first friends in Kim and Rory. And we laugh about that story to this day, but Cornerstone has really been our family here. When things are hard, God has provided amazing, amazing people at Cornerstone, and I'm so, so grateful.
Yeah. Well, we are to have you as well.
Yeah,
sure.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been just a privilege to be a part of that family.
Yeah, that's great. So as you said, if we move on a little bit, and if you talk us through anything you've learned in the recent years, couple of years maybe, or last year.
Yes. Yeah. There's loads. There's so much. So in the last 2 years, Don took voluntary redundancy in April of 2022. And he took some time off, and he was paid in a very healthy way because had been at the company for a long time. So he took a little bit of time off and then started looking for work. And it wasn't coming, and he was working so hard and applying for different things. And this was the beginning of our journey in this season. God made it very clear to us this past December. Don had an interview and had worked really, really hard on it, and he came second by 1 point in this interview. And that was really God saying, this isn't what I have for you anymore. Yeah. And it was very difficult kind of to take that in and swallow it. But God has had a different plan for us. So again, we get rid of all of our possessions.
Exactly.
And we made a plan for Don to go back to the U.S. in February. And Ketley is in university in the U.S., and Kaya is in the University of Exeter. So we've made a plan for her to, this is God's plan, not our plan really, for her to stay here, and God has provided indefinite leave.
Great.
For her. But Don went back to the U.S. in February, and within 7 weeks, he had found a job.
That's great.
And that is just God opening the door to go, here you are, this is the new thing that I have for you. And it's so important to be in his will, is what we've found. So Don's job is in Boston. He had been living in Denver with an aunt of mine. And God has provided a new place for us to live there. Great, and I know that God will provide a new church and new prayer partners. It won't be the same as what I've had here, but we look to God's provision for that.
That's right, yeah. And I find it really interesting how, I'm very similar to you in wanting to achieve things, and how God just kind of scraps everything that we have planned in a way, and you don't know, like you've been here 10 years and then suddenly things change so dramatically, and you end up going back to the US, and you probably never expected that to happen. Really.
Well, it's funny. I thought it would have happened 9 years ago, but God, every 2 or 3 years our visa has changed, and we go, okay, Lord, what this time? And He's provided, and I have carried the visa for the last probably 3 years, so have had to work full time at Bedelsford. And that's been hard, but God has taught me definitely humility in it. Sometimes I joke that I wipe noses and bums professionally, and I've definitely learned so many things from Bedelsford too.
Can you expand a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So at Bedelsford, I've often seen, so kids are complex needs, disabled, developmental delay, so cognitively and physically disabled. But it has been my absolute privilege and pleasure to be, I started as a TA and then became an STA and then a teacher. And I've learned that it's so important to love kids at school, and this has actually transferred to my own kids as well, and to people. I think we can make a generic to all people that it's important to love people for who they are, not what they can do, and again, that is God beating my head with a brick to say, come on, learn this lesson.
He knows us so well, doesn't he? He knows exactly what we need to hear.
Yes.
What we need to see.
So just loving people for who they are. And then I think in that I have been able to look at the kids that I work with, and we celebrate small steps. You can eat with a fork. Amazing. That's amazing. And we celebrate those little things. But in that I've really learned to count blessings. And I keep a list on my phone in the reminders of, here's my blessings for today. And it can be as simple as hearing the birds outside and being reminded that God looks after the sparrows. How much more valuable am I it can be as simple as I looked yesterday and there was a puppy dog tail wagging at the pub through the fence. And that's just a reminder to me that, God brings us joy in the tiny, tiny little things of life. And sometimes we have to look really hard for them. Yeah. But they're there. So we count our blessings.
That's for sure, yeah. And lastly, if you had any advice to give to younger Christians, I mean, that is already great advice, obviously. Yeah. If you had anything else to add.
Yeah. I think something that I have learned in the last year with this move is that it's like the song, "My soul finds rest in God alone." And the first time we moved from the U.S. to the U.K., I was a mess, a stress mess, trying to do and to manage it all myself and to, I had a whole notebook full of lists and lists and lists of things to do. And I still am wired that way. I'm driven that way. But this time around, with Dawn not having work, and I have been able to not worry and not be anxious about anything and completely put my trust in him. And what a difference that has made in, my well-being physically and mentally. And, I've been able to give it all to him and to go, Lord, you provided all of these things 11 years ago. I know that you will provide again now. So just resting in his provision has been something that, again, I've had to learn the very, very hard way. But remaining in him is so important, and being connected. So Psalm 62 says, "My soul finds rest in God. My hope comes from him." Exactly. We rest in that.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, as you say, we've got so many examples in our own lives or people around us, or obviously in the Bible as well, of God's faithfulness. And we so easily forget, even if he's been faithful to us this past week, really. And it's so easy to just not see that. And as you said, to just rest on our own achievements or abilities to do things for ourselves. And sometimes I wonder whether it's just because we see that around us so constantly of people who are living like this, or if it's just purely our own hearts to just produce this constantly of wanting to be in charge, really.
Yes.
It's probably both. But it's very encouraging to hear how he's provided for you all this time. Yes. I mean, and for all of us, obviously, but
Yes. And it's, every step, every day is a new day, good thing. But it's a journey. It really is a journey.
Yeah, exactly. So. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Amy, with us today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. That's all for today's episode of Sister Stories. But join us again next time.